Yeah, so this next session, we're starting 1 minute early, but hopefully that's okay. I'm just introducing. So it'll be talking about C2PA and content credentials. So I think every photo metadata conference that we've run for the past 4 years has had a session about C2PA, content provenance, content credentials, media provenance, call it what you will. It's a very hot topic and will continue to be. It's the sort of thing that takes a while to be adopted, but and it's hitting a few bumps along the way, but not unexpectedly. But it is moving forward, and we're excited to tell everyone about what's happening. So I'll be starting off just giving a broader update of things that have been going on recently in the world of C2PA and IPTC's perspective on it for the work that we do in the Media Provenance Committee. Then we have an interesting guest, Tim Bray, who is very storied in the tech world. He's one of the inventors of XML. So it brings home that people do need to invent these things. It didn't just appear. So back in the 90s, Tim was involved in that, and then he's been involved in many other tech initiatives and some of the biggest tech companies in the world since then. So you'll hear all about that. Well, you'll hear about his view on C2PA and what he's been doing as a photo hobbyist. And then we'll hear Marcos Armstrong from CBC Radio Canada. He's the senior specialist for content provenance there, and he's been mapping out CBC's internal workflows in terms of still image production and understanding how C2PA and content signing can fit into those workflows and the existing systems that they work with. So that's, again, a very practical, real-world implementation issue that we'll be looking at. So I will switch from one of my decks to the other one because I'm first up. So, excuse me, I will get started. So I'm not going to talk too much about what C2PA is. I assume that most people know about it by now, but just generally, it's worth having a reminder of what problem we are trying to solve when we're looking at this stuff. So from our point of view with IPTC and our members, generally, one of the things that we're trying to avoid is misrepresentation of media brands and media content. So there's an example here of CBC having its name and logo and web look and feel hijacked and used to promote a crypto fund. So it's another scam. And you saw in the title slide for the entire conference, we had another one using Elon Musk's digital image and using that to try and get people to give money to nefarious actors. And that was actually branded with CNBC, I believe. I couldn't find a still of it that had the branding on it, and these things tend to get scrubbed from the internet very quickly. But it was another instance of a news brand being appropriated and used in obviously an invalid context. So that's one of the things, but also just generally trying to increase users, readers, viewers' trust in the news. So to try and encourage people to understand what content is definitely real. I don't want to say true, but content that's definitely come from a camera, content that's definitely come from a video camera. It's definitely something that's worth preserving. And also at the other end of the workflow, content that has definitely been published by a given news publisher. So if something has come from BBC, CBC, CNBC, and hasn't been altered since it was published, then that's useful information that can help someone to decide whether or not to trust the news content that's in front of them. So we of the view that it's easier to prove what's real than to try and detect what's fake, because the fake detection is an arms race, and there are lots of people who are out there working on that, and that's great. We do need that, but it's like viruses and antivirus software. It's just going to be an endless battle, and we want to try and subvert that by digitally signing the content that is published by news publishers, so that we can verify that it was definitely that content that was published and that it has not been manipulated since it was published. And so ideally, this technology would be built into websites and the browsers and platforms, and maybe even operating systems in the long term, so that these content credentials, as they're called, would be able to be surfaced wherever people need them. So there is a lot that has happened. You can go back and look at the videos from our previous photo metadata conferences to see some of the other presentations that we've had, looking at the successes and also poking some holes in C2PA. Some of the holes that were poked last time have been fixed in subsequent versions of the spec, and some of them are being resolved in the conformance program, and some of the more governance-related issues around C2PA. Not to say that there are no problems and that everything is going to be super smooth from here on in, but there are a lot of people working on trying to make it as safe and secure and viable a system as possible. So some of the things that have happened since last time is back in May 2024, at the last photo metadata conference, we mentioned that we were starting off a thing called the IPTC Origin Verified News Publisher List. So the origin bit means that that it's come from a group called Project Origin that actually predated even the Content Authenticity Initiative. It was a consortium of BBC, CBC Radio Canada, and New York Times, Microsoft. I think Twitter were involved in the early days, but no longer. And so we ended up effectively adopting Project Origin. So its work is now continuing as the IPTC Media Provenance Committee. And so all IPTC members can take part in the work. And we are trying to get the media industry to adopt C2PA and to make it as smooth and simple as possible for the media industry to sign their content with C2PA signatures and certificates. So what we've done is allowed news publishers to obtain certificates and then get vetted with us, and we will then add their vetted certificates to our list. And we've created a verifier, a validator tool that will then show whether or not the content has been signed with a certificate that is on the verified news publisher list. So in the early days of C2PA, anyone could sign content with any certificate. And so that didn't really prove very much, because you could create a self-signed certificate saying that you were the New York Times. And obviously that's not useful if anyone can do that. So now we're trying to focus on any news publisher can get a certificate and have their content show up as being verified. So we don't make any claims about whether or not the content is true or is believable or has any sort of political slant. All we're saying is this content was published by this publisher and it has not been manipulated since the time that it was published. So we've created some tools and services to support publishers in that work. So as I said, we've created this validator. It's at originverify.iptc.org. You're welcome to try it out. We do need to update it to some of the more recent versions of C2PA libraries. So there might be a few newer images that won't validate, but we will update it very soon. And we've also created, currently just for internal use on our IPTC website, a WordPress plugin that automatically signs all images that are associated with content that we publish. So I published a blog post with this picture that I took of Prince William earlier this year when he was visiting Estonia, where I live. And And so that has now been signed with IPTC's C2PA certificate with its embedded metadata in the C2PA assertion. And so that is now surfaced when you look that image up using the Origin Verify plugin, Origin Verify validator. So we've also created a guide for news publishers and broadcasters who want to start signing their news content using C2PA, guiding people through the process. I won't say it's totally smooth sailing, but we try and make it as easy as possible, showing how people can get a certificate and what they need to do with the certificate to get it added to the verified news publisher list. Paul referenced this in his session earlier. So we will provide links. The links are in the deck, so you can see them in the download presentation. So another bit of news. So there's some news here that's quite recent. This was only last week. France Télévisions has just started signing its daily news content. So they have a special page on their site, and this links to that content. And it shows that it takes the lunchtime bulletin and the evening bulletin of the most recent of both of those, and they digitally sign the content using France Télévisions' certificate, which is on the verified news publisher list, and they've got a video player that surfaces the content credentials in English. No, sorry, it's in French, and I saw it in English because it had the auto translate turned on in my browser. But they do have a news post that announces it and talks about how they did it and what their plans are for the future. So I believe that France Télévisions is now the first news publisher who is routinely signing all of their, well, not all of their content, but routinely signing content on a daily basis. So we were doing that with our WordPress blog, but I don't think that really counts. We're not a news publisher. So yeah, this is the broadcast announcement, and they won a EBU Technology Award for their work around this. So congratulations to France Télévisions. So there's another piece of work that was demoed very recently, just a few days ago at the IBC Broadcast Technology Conference in Amsterdam. An accelerator group of publishers, tool vendors, and systems integrators got together to do a proof of concept of a tool that would stamp content with a C2PA certificate owned by the broadcaster. So this was in the context of broadcast video. And there are some examples there around the BBC signing their content, and RTE in Ireland, and WTR in Germany. So there are quite a few broadcasters that were involved. ITN in the UK were heavily involved in this as well. And the idea is that in a news context, we might not be able to display the full provenance chain of a piece of content. And we need to effectively remove, or actually remove, all of the previous C2PA information and just stamp at the end of the publishing chain, this was broadcast by this particular broadcaster, or this was published by this particular publisher. So the use case there might be there's an expose on some financial information that was illegal in some way, and that's in a news broadcast. And so they've obtained the financial documents. Some of it is able to be broadcast, but others must be redacted, must be blurred out in some way due to legal reasons. It's subject of an ongoing court case or something like that. And so if you had the original photo or the original video, and then the version that was blurred as a subsequent version of the image that's stored in the credentials chain, then people could open up the image effectively and go into a validator and look at the previous version of the image and see what they're not allowed to see the original unredacted versions of the content. And while the C2PA specification does allow for redaction, it's not very well implemented in tools yet. And so we can't take the chance around the tools supporting redaction in the way that we need to. And so the best way to do it in the short term is just to publish at the very end of the production chain and give it the stamp that says this was published by ITN, Channel 4, CBS, whoever it might be. And so that project had a great demo with some BBC signed content, which I can talk about now because it's my next example. So it was created using a new Sony camera that hasn't actually been released yet, but there's a pre-release version that a few broadcasters have had access to because Sony was involved in this particular project. So it's called the PXWZ300. And it's a broadcast quality video camera that automatically signs the video output with a C2PA certificate. So it's built into the device itself. So there are some stills cameras out there that do it, and there are some smartphones that do it as well. So the Google Pixel 10 that came out a few weeks ago automatically signs all photos that you take with a C2PA certificate. And but it's been a bit rare for it to happen in the video world, certainly the broadcast quality video world. So this Sony camera, we believe, is the first one that can do it. And so the BBC recorded a news piece using that camera and then took it through a production workflow and published it even as a I think it was an HLS stream. And so it was divided into segments and each segment had to be signed. And so there were lots of day-to-day issues to be solved in working out how that should work, how it should be surfaced in a news player, in a video player. So it's all very interesting. Don't really have time to go into a lot of detail about it. But IPTC members, you'll be hearing a lot more about it at the autumn meeting next month. Just another thing that's happened since last year is YouTube have started surfacing content that was captured with a camera. So if this is just some text taken from the YouTube help pages. So if you capture an image with C2PA metadata, and it's got to be version 2.1 or higher, and it has to have the right metadata. I assume it's the digital source type, but it didn't actually say in the help information. Then it will show up on YouTube as tagged with captured with a camera. So it's available in YouTube. I didn't put into this information this roundup, but LinkedIn also has very good support for C2PA and content credentials. So if you attach an image to a LinkedIn post that has content credentials, C2PA signing in it, then it will surface those in the LinkedIn interface. Unfortunately, and somewhat ironically, the LinkedIn publishing system actually strips out the embedded metadata. So you see the overlay of the CR icon, and when you click on it, you see the metadata. But if you right-click and download that image, it doesn't contain the metadata because it's been stripped out. So I'm sure they will solve that sometime soon. So I want to spend a couple of minutes, and I don't have too much longer, but to talk about C2PA and identity, because that's something that's very close to IPTC's heart. So some of you would know that from version 2.0 of the C2PA spec released last year, the beginning of last year, all references to individual or organizational identity were removed from the core C2PA spec. And a separate group called the Creator Assertions Working Group was set up that's not part of C2PA, but it took on that task of allowing identity to exist in the C2PA ecosystem. And and also the metadata assertions that could identify people or organizations, even including things like copyright notice and credit line, are now removed from the C2PA specification. So you can't include a C2PA metadata assertion, the core C2PA metadata assertion that includes any of that information. That there are various explanations of why that was done, but we don't have time to go into that here, unfortunately. But there is the option for validator tools to support additional trust anchors. And so, yeah, I'll get it to that. Sorry, that's a little bit misplaced, that comment. So around the same time, the C2PA conformance program was launched, and it took them a long time to work out all the details of how it would work. But a tool vendor can go through this conformance program and have their tool certified for compliance against the C2PA core spec. And then they would be granted a certificate that lives on a thing called the C2PA trust list. So they've created a list similar to our verified news publisher list, which only has device and software certificates on it. And all of those devices and software have gone through this conformance program and are shown to be conformant. And so that's how C2PA signing now works. So there is a section of the C2PA website, c2pa.org/conformance, which has some information about the timeline. So they are referring to the existing list that the validators use now as the interim trust list. So certificates like the BBC one, the IPTC one, the France Television one are on the interim trust list, and that list will remain operational for the purposes of validating existing content. They call it legacy support, but no future refreshes or additions will occur. So you won't be able to add an organizational certificate to the C2PA trust list after January the 1st. So it will only be devices and software tools. And so this is to encourage people to move across to this device and software signing world where everything goes back to a certificate that is on the C2PA trust list and has been proven to go through the conformance process and conform with the spec. So that brings us back to this CORG group that I mentioned, and they've created a thing called identity assertions. And they did a really good webinar a few weeks ago for the Content Authenticity Initiative, where Eric from CORG described exactly what they're doing. So the idea is that the overall manifest is signed by the tool, by the device or the software, and but within that, there is an assertion which is signed by the organization or an individual. And you can attach identity as part of that identity assertion, either using verifiable credentials, and that's how the LinkedIn integration works for LinkedIn Verify that's connected up with the Adobe Content Authenticity tool, or they allow for X509 certificates, which are the basis of our verified news publisher list. So conversations are ongoing, but at the moment, certainly the Adobe and CAI preferred direction and C2PA preferred direction is for organizational signing to happen via these identity assertions. So they've created some mock-ups. We worked with them to create some mock-ups of how this organizational identity might work, might look in a validator tool. So this is in Adobe's validator tool. There is a C2PA validator tool that will only validate at the device and software level. And other validators may choose not to look at the identity assertions, but they might only look at the device and signing certificates. But this is how it could look in validators that do support it. So you could surface the logo of the creator, the fact that it's on the Origin Verified Publisher list, and even embedded metadata that is included in a non core C2PA metadata assertion, but in a core.metadata assertion or in something else. So this is being worked through at the moment, and we are trying to push for it to be adopted, or for some level of organizational identity to be adopted as widely as possible, obviously, because it's the only thing that will work across the industry that will actually achieve our goals. Don't have time to go into this, but there is a thing called durable content credentials that uses watermarks and fingerprints to surface C2PA metadata that has been stripped out, that you can bring it back. But there are some implementation issues with it. But in terms of what our next steps are, so we are looking at exactly what metadata publishers should include in C2PA signed content. We are working on this organizational identity support avenue. So there are a few different options that we're looking at, but obviously we need organizational identity to be supported at some level within the C2PA ecosystem. So we're pushing quite hard on that. And we're looking at how to scale up the verified news publisher list work that we're doing, so we don't have to onboard new publishers and broadcasters one by one. So there was a lot of information there in a little bit longer time than I hoped, but hopefully it wasn't too long. So now we need to move to the next speaker, and we will hopefully have a bit of time for Q&A at the end. So the next speaker is Tim. So Tim, please go ahead and share your screen, and hopefully what you have to say will follow on nicely from what I...
And can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Let me just move it over to the correct screen.
We could. Yes, it's back.
Yes. Okay, hi. So hi, and thanks for having me. And so today here I represent, well, nobody officially. I'm not on any of the committees, and I don't work for any of the suppliers, but I'm a photographer and a software developer and a social media activist, and I've written a lot about C2PA. So under all those hats, this is something I care about. Also, I posted this to Twitter in December 2017, and I'm not actually claiming that I'm the first person to have thought about this idea, but I have been thinking about it for a while. So enough self-introduction. Today I'm going to look at my experience with C2PA in practice right now in 2025. Then I'm going to talk about what I think it's for. And well, let's start with a picture. So I should start by saying that a few of the things I'm going to talk about are broken. But nonetheless, I'm still a C2PA fan. You know, everything is in preview mode or beta mode or at the very best version 1.0. So the problems that exist are probably going to be addressed, but I will still mention them. I really do see us as being in glass half full mode. So this photo here is entirely created and processed by off-the-shelf commercial products and has content credentials. And let me say that I had a freaking hard time finding such a photo. There are very few content credentials out there on the internet. The reason for that is obvious. That's because every online photo either comes from social media or from a professional publishing system. And right at this moment in history, basically all of those pieces of software strip the metadata. So bye-bye to the C2PA. So one of our big jobs facing us in putting content credentials to work is convincing all the software makers to stop discarding them. Of course, that's complicated. You know, professional publishers probably want the content credentials to be there, you know, as people were just talking about now. But on social media, privacy is a key issue, and stripping metadata is often a perfectly sane policy decision for privacy reasons. So there's a lot of policy discussions that we're going to have before we can actually do the right thing in software to figure out what it is. So anyhow, that photo has C2PA. So if I open it up in Chrome, you'll notice it has the little CR glyphs in the top right and top left corners because I have multiple C2PA Chrome plugins. And let me note that I'm a little irritated that I have to use Chrome for this. Apparently there is no such thing for Safari yet, or Firefox that I could find. I clicked on one of them, and the readout is a little bit disappointing. It says the credentials were recorded by Lightroom and gives my name, but I think it's hiding way more than it's revealing. So let me click on the other one, and well, I guess that's a little bit richer. But still, I still think there's more. But both of them have an inspect button on them. So if I click on the inspect button, what do I get? Well, this is the Adobe Inspector, and it's broken. Sorry, something went wrong. Now, the good news is that this morning I was literally talking with Andy Parsons of Adobe about this problem, and they know about it, and they're going to fix it, like many of the things I'm going to show here today. Anyhow, so like it says, you can drag and drop. So I'll drag and drop that picture. And now you can see the more or less full content credentials. It turns out this picture was taken with a Leica M11. And the photographer is a famous software guy called Rob Pike, who follows me on Mastodon and was interested in this project and wanted to help out. So thanks to Rob, and also thanks to the Leica store in Sydney, Australia, who loaned him this camera. And how do you actually go about borrowing an M11? I don't know how he did that, but he did. So I edited it in Lightroom, and if you look at the upper and lower versions there, you can see that I cropped it down and brightened it up. So let's zoom in on the content credentials from the first step, from Leica. So there's, the camera model, the capture date, which is wrong because Rob didn't actually set the date on the camera before he took the picture. And then there's some other details, like there's a hardware adapter, and there's the pixel dimensions, the ISO, and the shutter speed. As a photographer, this is kind of cool and appeals to me. Unfortunately, it's also partially wrong. The focal length isn't 0, and Rob was pretty sure it didn't actually have an adapter on it. But still, kudos to Leica. They're trying to do the right thing, and everything is V1.0, and it'll probably get fixed. Now let's look at the assertions that were added by Lightroom. And this is quite a bit richer, particularly in the provenance front. So Lightroom lets you manage your identities using what we call OAuth flows. So it can ask Instagram, with my permission, what my Instagram handle is. And it can go even further with LinkedIn. It turns out that LinkedIn has an integration with Clear, the people who do fast tracking you at the airport. And so I got a Clear account, which required photos of my passport. And I went through the dance with LinkedIn to teach it about my Clear identity. And then I went to the dance with Lightroom to teach it about my LinkedIn identity. And so at the end of the day, what this is really saying is that, and I quote, Adobe says that LinkedIn says that Clear says that the government ID of the person who posted this says that he's named Timothy Bray. I don't know about you, but this strikes me as powerful provenance machinery. And I like it. And I think the sort of distributed identity via social media identities is a valuable thing. And I was actually quite disappointed to hear that this stuff's being ripped out of C2PA. And I would implore that the CAWG people do not screw this up. Allow this to keep on working because it's good. Now let's look what Lightroom actually did. That's in the right column there. And to discuss this, it may be useful to know what I actually thought I did, which is shown there. And I wonder how Lightroom got from what I actually did to that sort of vague arm-wavy description that sounds like it was written by a lawyer. And so I wanted to know. And so I'm a geek, so I used the open source C2PA tool to peek inside and see what Lightroom actually knows. And so I apologize if this hurts your hurts your eyes. But so there's some of the stuff that the Leica knows on the left. Now it turns out there's a whole lot more data than the inspector is showing. Leica captured 29 EXIF fields in its assertions, of which I just grabbed 3 at random. And Lightroom has lots and lots of data, of which I grabbed 3. And some of these values are pretty interesting. For example, the Leica actually has the serial number of the camera that was used, which I see actually as a provenance thing, and I hope not a privacy problem. Whereas Lightroom actually knows exactly what I did and highlights it there, saying, he turned the exposure knob to 60 and the sharpness knob to 52. So my feeling is the inspector is not doing us a good service at this point. It's doing either too little or too much. I can see an interface where all it tells me is, was it edited? Yes or no? Does it have AI in it? Yes or no? And that would be what I want to know. Or if I were actually a photo professional, I would want to dive in and see what the actual things that were done in Lightroom is. So I think we're still early in the stage of figuring out how to display content credentials to humans in a way that will meet their needs. We're still at a very early stage. Lots of work to do there. Oh, did I just say AI? Yes, I just did say AI. So let's talk about AI. And let me show you another picture, which in this case is a very bad picture. I was out walking in the park and I thought the shape of that building was interesting. So I took the picture and I was very disappointed when I brought it up on the screen, but I decided to use Lightroom to fix it up. So there's the fixed up version, which is much nicer. What I actually did was I used Lightroom's Select Sky feature to bring the color back into the sky. And I used Lightroom's Select Subject feature to grab the building and bring the colors and shading and so on out. Now, both of these features are heavily advertised by Adobe as being AI, AI, AI. And so I wonder if the content credentials disclose this as AI, and they absolutely do not. Um, is that a problem? I actually don't think it's a problem. I think it's perfectly okay. And I think it highlights the important distinction between automation AI and generative AI. Because, a skilled Photoshopper could, in fact, select all the sky and fix it up, and then select all the building and fix it up. This is just automating something that you could do. So this doesn't actually worry me at all. Well, how about some real generative AI then? So on the left is a purely synthetic turtle in shallow water generated by ChatGPT. And on the right is a picture of some stuff on my desktop that I took and then used with the Pixel 10 and then used Magic Eraser on. And I'm happy to report that both of them actually do disclose in the C2PA that a generative AI was used. Trained algorithmic media is the phrase that they use. Unfortunately, the ChatGPT doesn't actually validate, but once again, version 1.0, we'll get to it. I'm cheered that these people are apparently trying to do the right things. If you look across the spectrum of all the LLMs and the pictures they generate, I don't know what proportion are doing this, but we should praise the people who are doing it and denounce the people who aren't. But this is a good finding. Anyhow, I'm about done talking about the experience of C2PA today, but I probably should talk about this device a little bit, which is the Pixel 10. And it is important because it is the arrival of content credentials on the mass consumer market. Nobody knows how many pixels Google actually sells, but I guarantee it's way more than the number of M11s that Leica sells. And Samsung tends to follow Google pretty closely. So I think it's reasonable to expect there to be tens or hundreds of millions of devices out there in the world capturing C2PA in the next, year or two time frame. And that leaves, Apple out of the picture. Presumably they're going to climb on board one of these days. So that view of the C2PA, by the way, is from the Google Photos app. And what Google puts in there is very, very limited. They'll tell you it's taken with a pixel camera. Which kind of pixel? Which camera? No, none of that. Just a pixel camera. And it disclosed very nicely that I had used Magic Eraser and that I'd also, brightened it up a little bit and things like that. So this is going well. Google may decide to become a little bit more ambitious in future with what they include. Now, I note that they not only did not include provenance, they rotated 180 degrees and went to a lot of work to take out anything that could establish any provenance whatsoever, which is probably a sane first step given the privacy environment we live in. Oh, I did a little bit more drilling in. One of the interesting things is the C2PA isn't optional. Every picture from the Pixel camera app will have it, which means simplification in the UI because the user doesn't have to make any choices about this, but might have other implications that I'm not smart enough to have thought about yet. But interesting anyhow. When you're not using AI, digital source type is computational capture, which is interesting and accurate. And they mark the timestamp as untrusted, which is, I think, probably correct, but that's a long conversation. Um, I guess that's all I'm going to. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say was that oh, you notice that my full workflow examples were started with the Leica rather than the Pixel. That's because the workflow for Pixel is currently broken, and the Adobe Lightroom can't actually deal with the C2PA in the Pixel 10 picture. But I'm also have filed a bug on that, and Adobe has acknowledged it, and they're working on it. Remember, everything's v1.0. And I should also mention that there are lots of alternate camera apps for Android phones. Some of them are really good and are very popular. And they could all start writing much more rich C2PA if they wanted to, notably including provenance. So that's all I'm going to say about the current state of C2PA out there in the wild. But I want to talk about what it's for. And to do that, let's talk about what I'm going to sort all the C2PA things into three baskets. And capture, well, that's what like the Leica was doing, giving you details about what kind of camera it is and the shooting settings, processing what was done to it and what software did it, provenance, what person or organization published it. And I think it's a little bit oversimplified, so let me enrich this by bringing Gen AI into the picture because I think that's something that a lot of people care really a lot about at this point in history. So what do I think about this stuff? I'm going to leave the area of facts and get into opinions. So capture metadata, who cares actually? I really have trouble understanding, seeing scenarios in which somebody really cares about cryptographically signed proof of what camera model or what lens model or anything. I guess, if you were trying to prove that a picture was taken by Annie Leibowitz's camera or something, but that's provenance, not really capture. So I just don't know. Let's think about a professional publication scenario. They get photos from photographers, employees or agencies or whatever, and they might want to be sure that they're getting it from the real photographer, not an imposter. So they would want to check the C2PA provenance, and that would be useful. That would be done routinely on photo submission, and if it checks out, fine. If it doesn't, we need to look deeper. I think they'd also probably want to look at the is there Gen AI flag pretty carefully. And if there is, I'm not sure what they do, but I'm pretty sure that they would want to know that there was Gen AI used in constructing the picture. So from the publisher point of view, they also might want to equip the photos they publish with C2PA, as Brendan was just talking about, to demonstrate that they are the ones who chose and provided the media. And that assertion should be applied routinely by their content management system, which technically speaking is actually pretty easy. It seems that way to me as a software developer. So from the point of view of a professional publisher, provenance matters a lot. And knowing about Gen AI matters a lot. What else in the C2PA matters a lot? I'm having trouble thinking of anything, to be honest. Now let's turn to social media, which is the source of most pictures that most people see most days. And today, all the social networks strip the metadata, so there's no C2PA there. And that decision involves a lot of complicated privacy and intellectual property thinking. But there's one really important fact that they know about each piece of media that appears on the social networks, and that's who originally uploaded it. Because whoever uploaded it had to sign in to upload it, so they know where it came from. So I think it's a no-brainer that if the user wants, they can have a content credentials assertion in the photo saying initially uploaded by Tim at LinkedIn or whoever at wherever. What we'd like to achieve is that if you see some shocking or controversial media, you'd really want to know who originally posted it before you decided whether you wanted to believe it. And if it's missing content credentials, you would want that to be a big red flag. And if it has content credentials, your reaction might be different depending on whether it was posted by an Israeli military social media account, or the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or the BBC, or Igor5283972 at popular.online. And I think that's possible. So at the end of the day, here's how I kind of see it. For me, it's the P and the A in C2PA that matter, the provenance and authenticity. I think this technology has the potential to change the global internet conversation for the better by making it harder for liars to lie and easier for truth tellers to be believed. I think the first steps that we've taken down the C2PA road are broadly correct, and I think the path forward is reasonably clear. And all the little things that are broken, we can fix them. They are being fixed. And I don't know, from my point of view, I don't think there are many things that are more important than supporting truth tellers and impeding liars. This is really important stuff, and the work needs to go on and continue. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. That was excellent and a nice bit of encouragement to us all at the end there. So that was really interesting. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time left at the end for questions. But I know that you mentioned how easy it would be to just sign the content at the end of the workflow in a publisher or broadcaster. So now Marcos is here to tell us how easy it is in reality, the work that he's been doing in CBC Radio Canada. So Marcos, give us the truth teller's version of how the workflow really works.
Right. Will do. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Excellent.
Full screen.
Thank
Looks
you.
great.
Fantastic. Well, hi everybody. Tim, that was fascinating. I look forward to talking with you more about this subject. And thank you, Brendan, for giving context to what's been going on over the past year. And thank you all for being here. My name is Marcus Armstrong. I'm a senior specialist in content provenance at CBC Radio Canada. I'm based in Toronto, but we have offices and bureaus across the country and the world. In this role, I lead the development and coordination of content authenticity technologies and standards through editorial and production workflows. And today we're going to discuss CBC Radio Canada's crucial journey into implementing content credentials and C2PA to safeguard the authenticity of our content in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. So this presentation is going to outline our strategic approach to building and maintaining audience trust through verifiable content provenance, with a focus specifically on still images. Our primary focus today, even though still images, is going to cover principles and strategies that are going to extend to our work with video and audio in the very near future. So this journey is about building trust and with provenance in an era where distinguishing authentic content, as you've seen in some of the previous examples and previous presentations, is even more critical than ever. I just want to start off by saying too, there's a lot of information in these slides, which we probably won't have a lot of time to review in detail right now, but I wanted to give you this information as a lead behind for you to come back and review. So as a public media organization, CBC Radio Canada has a critical responsibility to ensure Canadians have access to reliable and verified information. This responsibility is increasingly challenging in the current media landscape. We are confronted, as we all know, with widespread availability of hyper-realistic AI-generated content across all media. And this leads to significant erosion of public trust in media. A key concern is the concept of a liar's dividend. It's a communication theory where the very existence of AI technologies allows individuals to deny real events captured on media even happened, making it harder to discern truth from fabrication. And at this point, Brendan talked about the arms race with detectors, AI detectors. We cannot rely solely on AI detection tools. They all operate differently and are not always 100% effective at this point. So therefore, our strategic response at CBC Radio Canada is to proactively implement content provenance standards ahead of time to build and maintain trust. So our existing workflow for still images involves several stages. It begins with capture using devices as DSLRs, drones, or smartphones. These images are then ingested into our digital asset management system, or DAM, where media librarians typically perform manual authentication for CBC's photographers' images. And by the way, we also have required fields for photographers to fill out when they're uploading to the DAM. They can do this from the field. We ask for them to confirm location, date taken, timestamps, as Tim mentioned, not always reliable. So we need that information from the source before it gets into our DAM. And then there's the production editing phase, which primarily uses photo editing software like Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop. And finally, images move to our content management system, our CMS, for publishing and distribution to platforms like cbc.ca and social media. And at the bottom of this illustration, you'll see some of the touch points that we've identified where signing and validating can take place. At this point, a lot of it is manual, but we are identifying opportunities for automatic signing and validation. So this current workflow presents significant challenges for content provenance. For example, we've observed that there are metadata retention issues where content credentials, IPTC, and other metadata frequently lose information or fail verification after passing through our current DAM or being published to the web. Many current C2PA implementations are still manual in our workflow and require substantial human effort to authenticate and sign. Furthermore, interoperability, as we all know, is a big issue right now, as different verification tools do not consistently display the full history of certificates, and Tim's presentation shows some examples of that. A major technical challenge we've also found is from content delivery networks, or CDNs, which frequently strip C2PA, IPTC, and other metadata, particularly when images are resized or edited. Despite these hurdles, the ongoing replacement of our DAM and CMS systems at CBC Radio Canada presents a significant opportunity to embed C2PA natively into these new systems, streamlining our workflows and enhancing metadata preservation. So our core strategy is for ensuring content authenticity is to create a cryptographic chain of custody for all our content from its origin to its distribution. This we're doing through exploring content credentials, including C2PA, which creates a continuous, verifiable history for each piece of content, including every modification. That's the goal. In an age of deepfakes and manipulated media, we all know it's crucial for us to provide our audiences in news with concrete assurances that content is reliable. And our goal is to eventually automate the embedding of content credentials into our new DAM system and content management systems. This is going to allow us to codify journalistic verification points throughout our news gathering and production processes, effectively attesting to the origin and authenticity of the content we share. Just to give you an example, we have a field to audience workflow, which requires photographers to submit their stills into the DAM wherever they are in the world. They can do it from their mobile device and they fill in those required fields. So we're really looking forward to exploring ways that we can implement C2PA signing in those phones and cameras. While we're currently piloting this strategy with still images, again, we're going to extend it to this chain of custody to video and audio to create a consistent standard of trust across all of our media offerings. So to establish a robust chain of custody, we've been systematically reviewing our current workflows to identify those critical touch points, which we're going to see in a second. Those are the touch points where images should be signed. These are the key points that span the entire content lifecycle from point of capture, ingest, to editing processes in production software, and finally at publication through our CMS and other platforms. A key strategic consideration has been to minimize the number of re-signing touch points to reduce complexity and the burden of change management. And furthermore, we are meticulously identifying exactly what data should be collected and added at each of these touch points to build comprehensive provenance records. This strategic integration is key to achieving a truly automated and robust chain of custody. So our testing has begun at the very first touch point, the point of capture. We use drones, DSLRs, smartphones, reporters, editors, producers. Anybody can take stills and upload them into the DAM. We've explored hardware-based solutions, specifically with C2PA-enabled cameras, which have been tested for direct in-camera signing. One of the clear benefits here is that signing at capture provides the earliest and most reliable origin assertion. And back to Tim's point, I would argue that the origin, the where and when, is really important in the news context because that is really key. Without that information from the EXIF metadata or verified at the point of capture, it can take time to verify where and when these photos were taken. So there are challenges, including certificate recognition by various verification tools with C2PA-enabled cameras, and with some cameras' own validation after re-signing. There are also complexities in securely distributing and managing CBC's signed certificates for multiple users. But we've also been testing mobile cameras like a C2PA-enabled mobile camera app for in-camera signing on smartphones. And while this benefits mobile-first content creators, we've encountered some pitfalls, such as the loss of content credentials during workflow transitions. For example, how they transfer those files or save them to the web or download them from the DAM. Concerns also exist regarding reliance on external storage of keys and manifests and the app's lack of fingerprinting in some of these apps. But we're continuing to survey other mobile options. So next in our stage is the ingest into the DAM, which is a critical touch point, especially for content that's not signed at capture. Our in-house CBC web signing tool is currently used by media librarians for manual authentication and signing of images from our photographers and freelancers as they enter the DAM. This manual process is crucial because it informs the design of our future automated solutions and establishes CBC's custody of content. The tool is operational and can also batch sign. Now, we've also been piloting third-party DAM integration solutions for our DAM, aiming to sign and verify images using C2PA and blockchain technology in the DAM. However, this solution presented some challenges, such as incomplete provenance information in manifests, and this was due to missing creation dates, missing AI edit disclosures. There are also issues with retaining the full history of changes or overwriting previous C2PA info. And also another issue with the third-party DAM integration is it involved reliance on third-party external storage, which leads to privacy issues as well and access. Other options, including tools with approaches for C2 signing, are watermarking, and we are considering those as well as fingerprinting. Crucially, our DAM itself presented some struggles, which we've been testing with retaining content credentials at export, which at times were stripped or altered upon download or transfer. Now, finally, during the production phase, where images are edited, preserving the chain of custody is really important to track modifications. Our big concern is that AI is not inadvertently used through one of those edit functions and then gets into the news ecosystem. The pre-edit stage right after camera is, if performed at all, is usually just involves minor edits like tone adjustment or exposure white balance, although even those are small use cases for journalism, for news, in our case. And there's the post edits before you upload to the CMS. Those might include minor like cropping and resizing. So right now we're actively testing integrations with Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop, which offer the C2PA signing capabilities, which we've been testing and have been declaring AI-driven edits like those from Adobe Firefly. Our aim is to require signing with a CBC certificate at export from Adobe software. This is going to benefit us in many ways because we can track modifications, not just as displayed to audiences, but for the many people who are touching those images along the way. They can see the history and also, importantly, flag AI usage. One of the challenges is that current verification tools might not explicitly flag Firefly edits, and sometimes they just show other edits. And sometimes re-signing with our CBC Authenticator signing tool can remove previous certificates, but this is being addressed. So our technology and infrastructure team, we've been working very closely in-house. They've developed a tool, the web signing tool, that allows us to re-sign an edited image at any point after capture. So this is really helpful for us to continue with that chain of custody. But we're also looking at developing workflows to ensure images retain their content credentials throughout the entire cycle or are re-signed, including being exported from the DAM. So we created guidance on image edits with clear department-specific guidance for news, marketing, and other areas of programming to address permissible edits, AI tool usage, and flagging AI-generated content. They've expressed an interest in this and also a need for clear guidance as people don't want to inadvertently use AI-driven edits in their editing. This is a document that we've created, and I'd be happy to share it with you as a follow-up if you're interested, but I'll just give you an example. In news, if they're producing a story, the edits should be minor and limited. If marketing is producing a promo for news, the edits should be minor as well because our audiences can perceive that as very journalistic. Whereas if marketing is producing a promo for an entertainment program, more image processing would be permissible, but AI edits should be avoided outside of storyboarding and creative planning. And even when it's used then, we are encouraging people to declare those edits by adding content credentials to prevent that content from being reused without knowing the context. So the final stage here is publication, and our goal is to ensure content credentials are maintained throughout the entire content management system. A major objective is to display content credentials directly to our audiences on cbc.ca. And we've successfully published our first images with embedded links in the body text of web stories. That's been phase 1 of our rollout. That link takes readers to a verification tool that shows the content's history. Now, our future plan includes an interactive icon which will overlay the image for richer display of provenance by early 2026. So, and we're carefully defining what information is relevant and permissible for public view. However, we're continuing to face challenges as content credentials can still break or be lost when as Tim mentioned, when it's published to the web or social media. So here's an example of the first news story, or one of the first news stories with CBC sign images. It was published on cbc.ca last year. It's the first phase of our implementation. It allows readers to click on learn more about this image. below the caption, and that would take them to a verify site where they can view the content credentials. As part of the second phase of implementation, and this is a mock-up you're seeing here, we are exploring an info icon for richer display as mentioned. And we're also exploring as part of phase 3, what level of detail to include in the story. Our considerations would include what our audience is expecting to see for different types of stories, like breaking news versus entertainment news. We're also considering the issue of redactions and images from conflict zones, like this one from Gaza, for example, may require removal of GPS location or replacement with a more general location, like a radius. And obviously, photographer names may not be included if security is a risk. So in summary, CBC is exploring, an active phase exploring, developing automated content credential workflows, creating both short-term and long-term workflows for C2PA signing and verification across all stages of the content lifecycle. And as you saw, we've developed the image editing guidance documents, and we're getting feedback from the various groups. Key is including specific advice on generative AI. We're also building awareness. That's been a big part of the work internally. We are socializing C2PA learnings through ongoing training sessions and engaging journalists and pilot groups. I've been meeting with people in branding and marketing who are very interested in brand safety and so forth. So I have been providing them resources, and they're very interested in exploring that for our advertising. Externally, we're also actively participating in international workshops like Project Origin and the German Marshall Fund, and collaborating with our partners at BBC and other orgs to ensure, and also ensuring that CBC is represented in IPTC steering committees to help drive C2P adoption and develop best practices. So publicly, we are committed to making content credentials audience-facing on cbc.ca to inform Canadians about content authenticity. So all these efforts combined with the ongoing replacement of our DAM and CMS are crucial. These new platforms provide a significant opportunity to embed C2PA natively, guiding our decisions on the best and most automated approaches to implementing content provenance across all our media workflows. Ultimately, our success hinges on sustained collaboration with industry partners like yourselves to collectively advance C2PA standards and ensure widespread adoption, which is essential in order for it to be effective. So I invite you to join us on our journey to implement content credentials in C2PA as a way to safeguard authenticity of our content in this rapidly evolving digital landscape. So let's stay in touch. Let's be connected. I have my email on the next slide. I'd be really interested to hear what your plans or implementation is regarding this. And here's my contact, and you will be able to see this slide afterwards, but there's a QR code to a link. It's a document like a bibliography that we have compiled that contains resources and information and press releases related to content provenance and artificial intelligence. Thanks for your time. I'm going to hand it over to Brendan and David, and thank you for organizing this.
Thank you very much, Marcos. That was excellent. We are 2 minutes over already, but hopefully no one minds. So I've tried to answer as many questions as I could in text in the Q&A section while Marcos was speaking. So there's maybe, I'm wondering if there's perhaps one question that we can pull out. Maybe it's for him or maybe for everyone. Is there, let's decode this question. So in terms of an arms race, so are there, I'm trying to work out how to parse this question. Maybe I'll choose a different question.
Tough, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if we think about the third point there, so in terms of supporting and impeding the flow of news and truth. So someone says, who gets to decide which party is doing what, and who decides who gets to decide? So that's the kind of philosophical question that you run into very quickly when you're talking about this kind of thing. So one thing that, oh, Tim, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fact of life that what you believe depends a lot on who you believe. And that's why C2PA is so great, because it, as you've repeatedly said, it does not establish truth. It just establishes provenance. And, I'm inclined to believe what the BBC says generally, and CBC and places like that. And I'm probably inclined to be highly suspicious of something that was posted by Igor 457293 at popular.online. And that's why we're doing this work, I think.
Yeah, so yeah, it's what we've always been saying throughout. It's not our job to decide what's real. And even there was a slightly embarrassing, but also illustrative example that one of the very first things that the BBC published with their C2PA signature turned out to be partly fake. And so they'd run it through their verification team, and it was published saying this is verified content we've sourced from social media, but we've checked it using our UGC verification systems, and we think this is true. And then someone did some analysis on it, and it turned out that the audio track had actually been taken from another video and had been superimposed over the top, showing that there was gunfire or more gunfire than there was in this particular instance. And but I think it is illustrative that even big, well-funded, reputable news organizations don't get it right all the time, but they try really hard and they tell everyone as soon as they know that they did get it wrong. And so they published an updated version of that content saying this is I think they just stripped out that audio track from that section, and they published some information about exactly what had happened and how they were notified. And I think that's something that we can work into this world where even when content goes out onto social media, if you look at it in a verification tool that maybe uses a watermark or a fingerprint by way of looking up stripped out metadata, that could also be a place where you go back and check with the broadcaster, has this content been updated by the broadcaster since it was put out in the world? Is there any additional information that was added? So that's a kind of extra benefit that you get from a technology like this that wasn't really even intended in the specification process. So I think, yes, there are issues. There are going to be many more issues found in the next few years, I'm sure, as this technology reaches more adoption. But I think it's the best chance that we've got right now, and we're definitely working hard to get through the learning process as quickly as we can and hit the success phase and the adoption phase as quickly as we can manage. So, any final thoughts from the speakers here?
I learned a lot.
Great. So I will just very quickly put up my final slide. So just to say thanks to all of the speakers, so to Ottar and Jerry and who else? And Paul, of course, and Marcos and Tim, but especially to David, because not only did he give 2 of the presentations today, but he did most of the organizing behind this event as the leader of the IPTC Photo Metadata Working Group. So thank you very much for putting everything together. And we will have, so the slides are already available on the event page, so you can download PDFs of everyone's slides and look for more information. And we also have a survey that I think will appear as soon as you exit this webinar. I think it's got 3 or 4 questions just about what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see next time. So please do answer that, and it'll help us to inform what we do next. And videos will be available in the next week or 2. I'll be traveling next week, but hopefully I can still find some time to process the videos. And thanks everyone for attending. I think it was another really good Photo Metadata conference, and we look forward to the next one next year.